And welcome back to this Dialogue Web Extra. I'm Marcia Franklin. I'm with Ambassador Hussein Haqqani. He is the ambassador from Pakistan to the United States, possibly one of the toughest diplomatic jobs in the world. You think so?
Well, I shouldn't say so.
Well, I'm sure you earn your keep. You know, I wanted to ask you a little bit more theoretically about some of the issues that we deal with between the so-called Western world and the so-called Muslim world, which of course is much broader. People tend to think of Islam as, well, they have a view of Islam as one thing, but it's very, very broad. And you've written quite extensively about the different, if you might say, psychological approaches that our country takes to problem solving versus other countries, or in contrast to other countries. I shouldn't say versus.
For one thing, there are 1.4 billion Muslims in the world. So anything that has more than any faith that unites more than 1.4 billion people cannot be homogeneous. So this notion of a Muslim world that is like, a stereotype and homogeneous is wrong to begin with. Similarly, the West also, the Germans think differently from the French, and the French think differently from the Anglo-Saxons, and the British and the Americans don't always agree, even on the spelling and pronunciation of certain words. The biggest difference between countries with the Muslim majority and especially the American outlook on life, it relates to the importance of history.
Time.
There's a tendency here to think of things, oh God, we've been doing this for 7 years, we've done a lot, why is it taking so long? For example, people would say about Iraq or Afghanistan or something like that. People in our part of the world would say, you've only spent 7 years here, So, for example, one of our senior officials, when he was visiting Washington, it was taken to somewhere, and the host said, oh, this is a very historic place, it's been around for 90 years, and the guest turned around and said, do you realize that the house I live in Pakistan, my family has lived in it consistently for the last 900 years, or in the same location.
Well, it wasn't Pakistan then.
Yeah, but it's the same location. So what he's talking about is there's different, so the land remains the same, it's Pakistan today, it was something else before, it was something else before, but there is a continuum which people do not always get. Then there are cultural issues. People think that tribes, clans, their significance, regions, ethnicities. People think that just as there is, okay, if there's an Afghanistan, then there must be, all Afghans must be identical, and if there's a Pakistan, all Pakistanis must think alike. It doesn't work that way, and it's a much more complex world, and addressing its problems needs much more time than people are willing to grant. So the lack of attention to historic detail and the lack of willingness to be patient are two major problems in dealing with a lot of problems, whether it was Vietnam, whether it is the Muslim world, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan or Pakistan. I think that's a consistent problem in US policy.
That we're too fixated on the today and the future and not enough on historical precedent.
And you think that there's a solution. Americans are a problem-solving nation. But certain complex international problems do not have engineering solutions. They have to emerge organically through various people agreeing, and sometimes you can't force them to agree. That's the important thing.
I've heard you say it could take upwards of, like, I don't know if you were joking or not, but 600 years to really get relations between.
Actually, I never said 600 years. All I said, no. All I said was, what you have sometimes is people looking at things in a 600-year time frame, and so you have people here who are looking at, like 60 days. I've got a 60-day contract to do this. How can I change hearts and minds? It doesn't happen that way. So I think things can happen much more quickly.
Couple generations.
With modern means of communications, etc. But it will still not be in the very, very short. It's certainly not going to be in the lifetime of one American Congress, which is only 2 years, or one American president's one term, which is only 4 years. It needs a little bigger time frame, and it doesn't always come out that way.
I sometimes wonder if we're watching parts of the Muslim world go through the transformation that, say, the Roman Catholic Church went through. at a certain period of time, much accelerated, of course, because we. But
there are many.
But,
Look,
but
Marsha,
they're
there are
watching
many comparisons. Whether it's and it'll be something different. You know, the solutions are going to be very different. But for example, at a political level, some of the Muslim countries that are democratic are going through some of the same arguments that you had in this country between the judiciary and the executive, between the executive and the legislature, between the legislature and the judiciary, etc. Things are happening. Similarly, in cultural terms, you know, transformation is still taking place. And let's be honest, even within the United States, there are multiple cultures. I mean, if you're trying to tell me that people in Boston, Massachusetts, and Birmingham, Alabama are exactly thinking at the same level on all religious and cultural issues, I won't believe that, because that's not true.
But they're not necessarily killing each other.
Well, so that's just one stage. They were at one point. I mean, let's be honest. There were occasions in this country when there were when Catholics were attacked. There were times in this country when Jews were attacked, and the history of racial attacks in this country is also there. So let's just not forget that people have to consciously overcome these things, and our societies are going through similar transitions and transformations. All societies in the world are not at the same level at any given time.
And I've heard you say another thing that Americans think is not everyone is an American or an American wannabe.
Well, basically people have their own aspirations and they want to approach things differently. Not everybody wants sort of, you know, a mortgage, a car, and a regular job.
In our lifetimes, do you think we'll see peace between Pakistan and India, for instance? Do you think, we're close to that?
I think Pakistan and India are both aspiring for peace, and I think Pakistan-India relations are a lot better today than they were a few years ago, and will be much better as time goes by. We have disputes like Jammu and Kashmir that we have to address. We would like our Indian neighbors to come to the table to discuss them.
They
but
say
the fact
they
of the
have,
matter is, well, no, that's not what they say. They say that the matter is closed. There are other issues that need priority, but this is part of the process. The basic underlying realization on both sides of the border is that we both need to overcome our disputes, and we need to move forward. Look, could you have thought in 1944 that France and Germany will be what they are today? Countries united by the same currency, part of the same union, having no requirements for visas to cross each other's border, open borders. Things change. When they change very fast. Could you have imagined during the Cold War that Russia and the United States will have the relationship they have now? And in my lifetime, I have seen a sea change in the relationship between China, which the Americans were blocking from becoming members of the UN from 1949 to 1973. The United States would not allow the People's Republic of China to become a member. Not only is China a friend of the United States, but most likely something or the other you are wearing is made in China.
As we close, I would like to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your home country. Pretty much all we hear about Pakistan is negative in the news. And I would imagine that many people are afraid to go there. And speak a little bit about Pakistan, some of its wonders, some of its...
Well, the people who have been to Pakistan, of course, whether it's Greg Mortensen or whether it's any of the people who've gone, for example, scaling the various mountains of the north of the country, have always come back speaking about both the beauty of the country, geographic beauty, as well as the hospitality of the people. And I think that we all have to understand, most people who come to the United States go back praising the United States for many things as well. That said, it all depends. I mean, the one person who comes to New York and gets mugged on the very first night they arrive here will never have a positive view of life here. But as a whole, people who travel through the United States from all over the world have good things to say about the US too. A lot of what essentially is negative are disagreements about political policy. And people have to understand political policy is not the same as the life of people. There are many things that make, in fact, while I love the media, one of my biggest criticisms of 24/7 media is that it makes things that are unimportant important, because in this day and age, bad news is news. For example, nobody gives a news item saying out of 180 million Pakistanis, 179,998,000 had a normal day today, and only 2,000 lived in a little town where there was one bomb blast that killed 3 people. That's not how reporting is done. It's always 3 people killed in Pakistan, which in the psychological association world makes people associate death with Pakistan. And by the way, don't live under any illusions. Exactly the reverse is happening about the United States. Everywhere in the world, people are not hearing about people doing their normal life, etc., etc. It's always all the disturbing things you have in this country, you know, a fire here, an accident there, a child abducted here. That's what's making the news. Maybe at some point, you and I do come from the media myself originally, and we need to think about what and how do we define news, because that's really the way we define news is also tearing the world apart now.
Well, I'm sure it's both of our roles as ambassador and journalist to help dispel some of the myths out there about countries, civilizations, and cultures. Thank you very much for spending time with me. I appreciate it. You've been listening to Ambassador Hussein Haqqani. He's the ambassador from Pakistan to the United States. Thanks for watching this Dialogue Web Extra. I'm Marcia Franklin.